I grew up in Los Angeles, and during my formative years, I would be taken on an annual pilgrimage to what I still recall as an amazing, awe-inspiring place. That place was Disneyland. And back then, upon entering the magical kingdom, the first exhibit you came across was a General Electric-sponsored exhibit called the Carousel of Progress. The thinly veiled commercial pitch behind the Carousel of Progress is that electricity made your life better. And as time went on, your life was going to get even better because electric technology was improving. You were ushered into a theater setting, greeted into the home of an animatronic family, and as the stage would rotate clockwise through time from one era in the history of energy to another. Now, you started out in the 1890s, before the widespread advent of electricity. Life was hard, sweaty, and laborious. Then the stage revolved you around to the same family who, curiously, did not age with the passage of time. First into the early electric era of the 1920s, then into the current era, which at that point in my young life was the 1960s, and then finally to what was called the energy world of the future. Now, the energy world of the future was clearly the coolest part. Zero pollution electric generators powered by the sun and the wind and the tide delivered abundant energy to clean and well-lit cityscapes, while on the roads, pollution-free electric vehicles were seamlessly shuttling along computer-controlled skyways. Inside the family house, every appliance was pre-programmed to deliver every creature comfort that you would want, from space conditioning to freshly prepared food to automated cleaning without any human intervention whatsoever. And as time went on and the value of energy increased, its cost became lower and lower as time progressed. Ahead of us was the big, bright, beautiful tomorrow, as the theme song for the Carousel of Progress proclaimed. Now, here's the thing. That big, bright, beautiful tomorrow that the Carousel of Progress foretold could be and should be with us today. All of the requisite technology elements to produce, distribute, and manage clean, cheap electricity that Disneyland predicted back in my childhood are available, commercially available today. All of the intellectual property, hardware, and software applications to use that clean, cheap energy in a manner that makes life better, makes life more productive, and makes life more environmentally benign also exist today. So the question is, if we have all of the commercial scale building blocks to make the energy world of the future a reality, why aren't we there yet? To answer that question, I'd like to transport you back in time, specifically to the year 1912. In that year, the majority of the North American land base, for most of this country, the dominant form of energy was the wind. Clean, low-cost, and 100% American sourced. The wind blowing across this continent was the dominant source of energy for the motive force, pumping, milling, threshing, grain elevation, and domestic household needs of a significant part of this country. As electrification then started to take place, those self-same windmills were synced up with electrical generators to magnify their value and importance. We view wind energy today as a wonderful, great American success story. There are 50,000 wind turbines, as we speak today, producing energy in this country. That's a great success story. Guess what? In 1912, there weren't 50,000 windmills. There were 6 million windmills in this country 100 years ago. In 1912, if there were to have been a Fortune 100 ranking of the largest industrial enterprises in this nation, the U.S. Wind Engine Company would certainly have been prominent on that list. It was the largest and most technologically advanced wind generator in the entire world. In the 1912 annual report of the U.S. Wind Energy Company, the CEO of the firm wrote this very inspiring and optimistic pitch about the company's future. Quote, "As great as our company's sales and financial performance have been. Today's successes are just a small precursor to the firm's bright future. Harnessing the wind to benefit American agriculture and industry promises a limitless market. As long as the wind continues to blow across the hills and plains of this great country, our company will continue to grow and prosper. Within 5 years of writing that tome, the U.S. Wind Engine Company had shuttered the vast majority of its production lines, and within a decade, it failed to exist as a company. During this era, the vast majority of the competing wind energy firms also declared bankruptcy. And once the wind energy industry collapsed in the first quarter of the 20th century, it took over 70 years for that industry to regain any semblance of importance on the American energy landscape. Why did the U.S. Wind Engine Company die when it was most optimistic about its own future? The answer is that at the same time that this large company was boastful about its future prospects, another American energy company, much smaller, much far less confident in its future, was innovating. And those innovations of that small company had nothing to do with technology. It owned no patents or intellectual property. It was the commercial innovations of that firm, the business model that allowed its customers to say yes, that made all the difference in the world. That upstart firm was a small electric utility in Chicago, run by the former head of electric commercial operations for Thomas Edison, a gentleman by the name of Samuel Insull. Insull took over the Chicago Edison Company at a time when the firm was losing money, struggling to survive, and had 27 other competitors in the same limited geographic space. Insull had a problem. He had to become profitable. And to become profitable, he had to grow. And to grow, he had to make his product so compelling that customers saying yes to him would be a no-brainer decision. What Insull then did was shocking, revolutionary, and subject to heavy criticism from his peers at the time. He said to the government, "Please regulate me." Shocking, revolutionary, and absolutely brilliant, because he recognized that he was in a very capital-intensive business. And regulation meant the ability to supply a defined service territory and thus convince lenders to provide for him significant amounts of low-cost debt against his secure revenue base. Insull convinced the state of Illinois to establish the Illinois Public Utilities Commission in 1913 to regulate him. The act allowed Insull to do what no one in that industry had been able to do before: access low-cost permanent capital. And that capital allowed him, over the ensuing years, to drop his price of his product by over 80%. But there was something more important than just dropping his price. Unlike the windmill companies, Mr. Insull was financing himself all of the upfront capital costs associated with building out the infrastructure, and he could charge you on a monthly basis for what you used. If I wanted to buy a windmill from the U.S. Wind Engine Company, I had to fork out the hundreds of dollars, which at that time was a lot to fork out, so that I could generate power for my farmer business. I had to buy the product from the U.S. Wind Engine Company. I had to construct it myself, and it cost a lot of money before I got one iota of benefit. However, if I wanted long-term access to Mr. Insull's fleet of fossil fuel-driven dynamos, I didn't have to shell out any capital. All I had to do is sign up, and the power would flow, and I'd pay for what I used on a monthly basis. So did the U.S. Wind Engine Company die because Mr. Insull was a commercial genius with an unbeatable commercial innovation? Yes, but mainly no. It was because the U.S. Wind Engine Company failed to commercially adapt while his competitors were adapting. They didn't offer the same types of products and services and commercial innovation. There was nothing proprietary, there was nothing exclusive about what Mr. Insull had done. And while Mr. Insull was eating the lunch of the U.S. Wind Engine Company and other wind energy companies, none of them not only innovated, they didn't even have the ability or desire to even copy the innovation of their competitors. great technological advances can only make great contributions to society if they are attached to a commercial structure that enables customers to say yes quickly and in large numbers. The battle for sustainable energy security in the US today is playing out with vastly different technology choices and a whole new set of both national security and environmental implications. But the challenge facing our society is exactly parallel to the one that faced a challenged, changing industry 100 years ago. And that is a framework in which vast amounts of capital need to be deployed in order for a new portfolio of energy production, delivery, and consumption options to replace the entrenched way of making, delivering, and using energy. We in the energy industry operate in the most capital-intensive business on Earth. The business models that enable new sources and applications of energy to rapidly penetrate the market are as important, and I would argue even more important, to the mass adoption of energy innovations in our society than the exact nature of the next major energy technology breakthrough. We are here to celebrate innovations in energy technology that are potentially disruptive in advancing the evolution towards sustainable, low-cost American energy. What these potentially transformative technologies need in order to become actually transformational products and services are commercial innovations that will enable wide-scale societal adoption. We have been told the not full truth about mousetraps and building better mousetraps. And as Ralph Waldo Edison claimed, if you build one, the world will beat a path to your doorstep. Since the US Patent and Trademark Office opened in 1828, they have issued over 4,400 mousetrap patents. Of those 4,400 mousetrap patents, of which an average of 40 new ones, believe it or not, have been issued annually pretty much every year in the 21st century. Only 24 of those have made any money whatsoever, and only one, the Victor Springtrap, which was invented in 1890, remains dominant in the market. The reason that the energy world of tomorrow, as foretold by Disney's Carousel of Progress, doesn't exist today has nothing to do with the existence or lack thereof of better mousetraps or better energy technologies. It has much more to do with the commercial innovation that is required to get these technologies quickly and seamlessly into our homes, into our businesses, into our streets. Peter Drucker wrote, "Ideas are abundant. What is of value is the effective placement of those ideas into situations that develop into action." Restating Dr. Drucker's words into the context of this discussion today, great technological advances can only make great contributions to society if they are attached to a commercial structure that enables customers to say yes rapidly and in large numbers. Thank you very much.